Welcome, everybody, to another Sad Jams interview from We're Trying Records. We're bringing you inside the mind of some of the finest creators from emo and DIY music. I'm Anthony Corbo, and I'm joined here today by Rob. How are you?
I'm all right. How about yourself?
I'm doing great. Yeah, it's good to finally meet you. I really enjoyed listening to your music and especially your latest track, Hydrangeas, that you submitted in here. So I think before we hop into all that, why don't you just tell me a little bit about your background as a musician? I know New Jersey has such a vibrant punk and
Yeah.
DIY kind of music scene and emo music scene, and I'd imagine you've probably been involved in a few different projects over time. So yeah, I guess if you want to talk about a little bit of what kind of got you to this point here as a musician.
Sure. Well, I started out very young playing guitar, just strumming an acoustic like a lot of folks have. I got into early stuff like the Beatles and alternative rock, and that's what has led me to a lot of the stuff nowadays. Even like the newest stuff with Rob is just kind of me going back to those roots of like alternative rock stuff.
Sure.
I've played in a fair few bands of all kinds of different instruments. I've played trumpet in bands. I've played guitar, bass, some keyboard here and there. Not the
Nice.
greatest, but you know. And New Jersey just has such a vibrant scene that just allows
Sure.
me to say, "Hey, I want to go play trumpet in a band. Let's see if there's
Right.
any of my friends who are in need of a trumpet player." And next thing you know, next week I'm playing in a band, and
Yeah, and I mean that's
it's
super cool too. I feel like that's
yeah,
pretty emblematic of like DIY scenes across the country and really, I guess,
exactly,
internationally too, where it's just like, hey, we have an interest in some trumpet here. Let's
exactly,
find
yeah,
someone from the local area, or even, I guess, wherever, and see if they can just
yeah,
record a quick trumpet part for
exactly.
us. So yeah, I definitely notice a lot of those influences in some of your music. Like Hydrangeas. It's got a lot of like Maximus elements to it. I'm hearing like some like drum machines clipping, some like fuzzy guitars, and definitely like that like wall of synth sound that really comes at
Yeah.
you. But clear melodies and everything. And I guess like kind of starting off, like what did that process look like getting into that song?
Yeah, well, all my songs just start pretty basic, either acoustic guitar or my Telecaster, which is what I write most of
Sure.
my stuff on. And then from there on out, I record the basic layers, drums, bass guitar, vocals, etc. And then I just kind of go crazy for a couple nights and just add whatever elements I
Sure.
can think of, anything I think sounds cool. And it it's a roller coaster of a process.
Yeah.
Some things work, some things don't, but ultimately, and I think that's just what the whole, I guess, mission statement of this project and especially this next record coming out is it's trying new stuff, just going crazy, seeing, just throwing things at the wall and seeing what sticks.
Sure. Yeah, I'd imagine a lot of time just in Logic. Is there like a lot of MIDI on the album or?
Yes.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, that can definitely hear a good amount of that. But like, yeah, and like going into influences too, I definitely hear like some of like the Beatles and like especially the later psych rock stuff. But like, a lot of like the '90s alternative stuff too, especially on like some of your last album, Lost, as well.
Yeah.
But like, I'm also hearing like little bits of like '80 goth rock in there. I'm hearing like little
Yep.
bits of like metal in some areas. Like, you have
Exactly.
a song on your last album called Heaven that I definitely heard like little bit of like '80s metal mixed with some Nirvana in there and everything. It
Yep.
was very, very interesting. So I guess what are some of the other deeper influences that you might have that kind of play into your songwriting and your production?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, it goes all across the board. On this next record, there's a lot of sounds that are just completely different genres. There's elements of hip hop and trap, and there's elements of, like that psych rock. There's elements of blues and country and jazz. And it kind of just comes from all across the board. And a lot of that comes from playing in so many different bands that have been so many different genres and styles to where I've had to learn a jazz song. I've had to learn, I've played ska before. So there's a lot. And I mean, I'd say one of the bigger influences that I don't think many people will probably be able to pick up on is The Weekend in a lot of these
Oh,
songs.
okay.
I don't think there's a lot of pop nowadays that doesn't have some influence from Abel's sound because it's
Mm,
just so pervasive in the modern pop era
yeah.
and just a lot of pop and stuff like that, really.
Yeah, that's super interesting. I feel like there's definitely a lot of those pop influences. And yeah, The Weeknd's an interesting one. Like, it's not something that I
Yeah.
put together initially on like first listen, but hearing you mention that, like, very much clicks in my mind and that kind of
Yeah.
influence. Yeah, so it's kind of like almost I feel like there's a lot of similar influence that like Drake had in the early like
Exactly. Yeah.
2010s or so that like kind of just ended up permeating
Yep.
into everything else that came afterwards. And yeah, I see those lines with The Weeknd a lot as well. So
Yep.
that's cool. That's really, I like seeing like those kind of like, even if they're, not under the radar as far as genres are concerned,
Yeah.
like it's really cool seeing the elements of those that can come through into the DIY scene as well.
Exactly.
Yeah, cool. So I guess looking at your new album coming out soon, Hydrangeas is the single off of that. Do you have a release date for that?
It's coming later this summer. I'm working on a couple overdubs, and then it's going to be fully mixed and mastered. A lot of it's already pretty much done, but later this summer, probably
Oh,
around August.
cool. So what would you say is like the biggest difference between this album and the last one?
The way that I think of it is, and kind of going back to alternative rock, the difference between like Siamese Dream and Melancholy.
Mm,
If I was to use Smashing Pumpkins as an example, Siamese Dream was very cohesive and put together, and I guess kind of standard for Smashing Pumpkins, if you
sure.
will. This next record is honestly a bit chaotic, but it does all go together. It does all work as a record, and you will hear a lot of things that make you go, "Huh, that's an interesting one. I didn't expect that to happen
Mm.
after the next song."
Yeah, I definitely I feel the same way. I'm also a major like King Gizzard fan, so I've
Yeah,
definitely heard on their most recent album like there was like pop songs that went into metal songs and everything from there.
exactly,
And yeah, it's just there's no reason for genres half the time. Just throw it all together and
exactly.
it all paints a
Yep,
picture one way or another.
exactly. I live for that shit. I love it.
Awesome. Yeah. So I'm gonna ask you the question as old as time now, kind of as we get to the end here. Is a hot dog a sandwich?
It's not.
No.
It's not a sandwich
No. What's your reasoning there? We got two pieces of bread and we got the meat, and so
because it's closed on one end.
no, fair enough. Fair enough. That's a compelling argument. I like it straightforward. I've heard a lot of people answer that question with a rambling anecdote about one thing or another, but no, you just hit the nail on the head. I
No,
think you're right.
I've spent enough nights just drunk out of my mind doing that with my friends.
Yep.
So
Closes the door on that. Well, cool then. I guess if there's anything you'd like to plug before we get you out of here, I know you said the new album's coming out in August, but like social media or Spotify, anything like that.
sure. Well, I just Rov ROV on all music services: Spotify, Apple Music, iTunes, etc. My Instagram is Rov Nivison, Nivison, just my last name. My Twitter is Rov's Tweets, pretty basic. The record will be coming out August time. Go listen to Hydrangeas if you haven't already. I think a lot of people will like it. I put a lot of time into it. And when I say a lot, I mean quite a lot. And go listen back to Lost if you haven't, and maybe you'll find something you like. Maybe you can add something to your playlist. Maybe you'll have a good time.
Yeah,
And hopefully,
I highly recommend all of that.
yeah,
Yeah, sounds like a plan right there. I know that I have dug through Lost quite a few times at this point, and yeah, have definitely enjoyed it. So kudos
I'm
to
glad
you
to
on
hear
all
it.
your hard work, and
Thank you. Thank
yeah,
you.
it was very very exciting to talk to you today.
Thank you. It was a great time. Thank you for having me.
No problem. Well, on behalf of We're Trying Records and Sad Jams, this is Anthony Corbo. I've been with Rob here, and yeah, take care.